Hello there, David here again with part 2 of the Dragon's Lair video. Now if you missed part 1, I'll leave a link up top somewhere and one down in the description below. But part 1 we covered off how I actually built the Dragon's Lair / Volcano, and now we're going to look at it a little bit more in depth and see how we can use that terrain to mess about with our players, because that's what a DM's job is. Let's roll the title credits. Right, let's talk about the way that this terrain is going to affect your game. Now, at the end of the day, it's the monsters that really should be the ones that are taking your party out or causing your party the largest amount of grief, but that doesn't mean that your terrain can't have some kind of an effect. Now, some DMs are having to deal with basically a pack of murder hobos, and the only thing you can do is sort of throw bigger and badder monsters at them. No, there are other ways to deal with parties like that, and that is essentially to just nickel and dime them. Every arrow they expend, every spell they have to cast, every single hit point that they use is going to mean they are going to be weaker when it comes to dealing with the big bad right at the end. And they should be working for a living, not just looting you. So, without further ado, let's actually talk about this piece of terrain and how it is going to affect your game. Now, I am of a certain age, which means that I deal with an older version of D&D than an awful lot of you. I will be talking in terms of 2nd edition, but it should be easy enough to, you know, just port it over to whatever game system or version that you are using. Now, on the approach, it may not occur to your party to check a few things out, but there are things there which are quite apparent. The first one is the fact that this whole volcano construct has been manufactured to some extent. They are going to be able to detect some kind of residual magic in the area, because there's going to be an awful lot of sort of stone-shaped spells that have been used in the construction and layout of this particular piece. So just bear that bit in mind. The other thing is that back according to our plan, we deliberately made it very barren. Now, there is a very strict demarcation between the sort of stony, rocky areas and places where there are vegetation. So if your party is used to using things like the entangle spell, it's not going to work. There is no vegetation past that line. Not happening. The other, just bear in mind with the stench from that volcano, it is going to be repelling insects, so things like insect swarms aren't going to work. If you've got casters that rely on nature-based magic, they're going to be up against it. They're going to be very limited in this sort of environment. Now, we have given them a very obvious path in, that rocky staircase up the side of the volcano. But an enterprising party may decide to go a different route. There's a very good reason why I chose this particular colour scheme for this volcano. That is obsidian. It's volcanic glass. So anybody that decides that they're going to climb one of the other faces, they're going to have penalties to that climb roll. And of course, because it is scattered with obsidian shards around the bottom, which is essentially broken glass, there's going to be a couple of things that come into play there. Okay, one, if they fall, and there's a good chance that they may well do, because they're going to be hitting penalties for going up such a slick surface, add some damage on. Okay, because they are essentially falling onto the equivalent of caltrops. Oh yeah, and just for, you know, druids, monks, those kind of people that walk around barefoot, give them a couple of points of damage. You know, you don't walk on broken glass without any kind of ramification. That'll just give them a warning shot. Of course, they have got the opportunity to try using a fly spell. Hey, that's cool. It's another spell that you've pulled from them. But one thing they may not have thought about is the fact that they are not going to be used to dealing with those real sheer thermals that are coming from a volcanic crater which is still active. Okay, so they are going to be at a disadvantage. If you put any defenders in there that have got a flying ability, like a red dragon, your party is going to be at a disadvantage while in the air. Maybe some wisdom rolls. So let's assume that for various reasons they've decided to take that easy path and the staircase around the side. Fine, until they reach that side of the volcano. Now, just have a look at this. It is curved all the way around, which means line of sight is blocked. As they approach it, it may look as if that pathway is completely clear and that they can sneak up, but very quickly you can have defenders coming down there and they are going to be confronted by an awful lot of things that they just haven't seen coming out from that entranceway. And of course, you can always put lookouts on ladders like this up top to keep an eye on what your party are doing. So with that line of sight, just remember when you're putting miniatures on, take that into account, what they can actually see. You don't want to tip your hand by packing that staircase with miniatures if they can't see it. Now, as soon as they start getting onto that staircase going up the side of the volcano, they're going to be in single file, and it is a narrow, treacherous pathway. One, they've got to watch their footing. If you want to do dex rolls, that's up to you. But the other thing, and this is pretty key, is because of the direction around that we have laid that path, any character who is right-handed and is using a slashing or bludgeoning weapon is going to be impeded by that wall. So those guys are going to be on maybe a -1, -2 to hit penalty. Thrusting weapons, yeah, you're fine. Left-handed, yeah, alright. But just make sure that your party is very specific, or you are aware of how your party fights, because it does come into practice. And of course, let's face it, your defenders aren't going to have that kind of problem. And because they're coming down the stairs, they also get a bonus to hit for having a height advantage. You'd forgotten that one, hadn't you? Now, let's look at this feature in particular. This was actually a mistake in manufacture. As I was building up from the bottom and building down from the top, I kind of got the heights wrong, and so I've had to do this sort of like awkward step. I mean, I think it looks quite good as a feature. It's one of those ones where I used it as a feature of the terrain rather than, you know, going out of my way to actually rectify it. But what you have there is a step which is realistically too high to just go up in a single step. Or you've got a little minor step at the back that they can kind of, you know, flick up and onto. But what it does mean is that getting up that area, because they can't stay on that half step, you're going to be talking about dex checks of some kind. Whether or not they're jumping or it's a fast step to get up there. And of course, if they're in the middle of combat, all the better. Just beware. Anybody who fails a dex roll, there is the possibility, depending on which way they fall, that they can go off the side. And that is 15 foot high, which is over the 10-foot limit where they start rolling for damage. And of course they land on broken glass at the bottom. Hey! Add a couple more points of damage. Let's nickel and dime them. And of course, as they slow down to navigate that, because they're not realistically going to be able to take it at a run, remember those lookouts we had up top? Well, if they've got their ladder right there, rocks, burning oil, your choice. Okay, so they are actually inside the volcano crater now. Getting up to that platform at the top. Great stuff. What's the first thing you do? Your last defender, remove the ladder. So, they've got to work out how to get down from there. Now, it's entirely possible that, you know, they've decided to start using area effect spells to get through that gap in the wall. Hey, if they want to let off a fireball up there, good on them. That is wood, it has got rope binding, it is going to burn, which means all in all you've got a reasonable chance of stranding them at the top. And I specifically said to make sure that that gap was larger than 5 centimetres away from the walkway underneath. Why? Because that's greater than a 10-foot drop. They come down in a hurry or they try and jump, it's more damage. Shame. So they are finally into the volcano itself. They are so close to that cavern mouth and yet so far away. There's a couple of ways that I can think of to get from where they are to that cavern mouth. There is the obvious way, which is the walkway around. Hey, if they get into any kind of ranged fire, like dragon breath, they are in the open, no cover whatsoever. Even a couple of archers or things like that. Again, you're causing them to expend arrows, you're pulling spells, it's all good. And they've got to get all the way around there. They can try getting down and across the lava and climbing up the other side if they want to take a quicker path. Yeah, they're going to be susceptible to heat damage. That's up to them. Climbing around that short wall, again, that is sheer, that is obsidian. And if you've got any kind of defender on the other side, they are going to be able to make it real nasty for anybody that's trying that. And of course, just make sure that they've got spears so they can poke them from a distance. So let us assume that they have managed to circumnavigate all the way around. The final piece before they get into that cavern, I have left that pole to which sacrifices would be tied to appease our dragon. That is a ritual altar. It's a sacrificial place. So at the very least, in place, permanently around there, just because of the nastiness, is going to be something like a protection from good 10-foot radius, plus whatever other static, nasty, evil, reverse spells that you can think of. And hey, once they've got past there, they've got all of the underground to go. So, cheers, there you go. There is an insight into my twisted mind as a DM and some examples of the nastiness that you can impart upon your player group. And if you think that's bad, wait until you see some of the other builds that I've got in line. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me. As I say, please hit the like and subscribe, get notifications, all that kind of thing. I will see you in the next video. Enjoy your gaming. Ta-ra for now.